Was someone trying to extort Sebastian? He certainly had the wealth for it. If that were the case, they probably already told him they had me. The ball was in his court. Would he do what they asked? It pained me to admit, but I didn't know. I had no doubt that he loved me, but the stakes were obviously much higher than I'd imagined. Perhaps they were too high. Of course, extortion was probably the best-case scenario. There were much darker possibilities. If Sebastian's secrets were as large as they seemed, it made sense that he'd have enemies who may be under the impression I knew something important. I suspected that if that were the case, they wouldn't be gentle about extracting the truth. My mind filled with terrifying visions, knives and saws and long iron pokers heated to a glowing red. Deep down, I knew there was a third possibility too. Maybe my kidnappers weren't strangers at all, no matter how I approached it. I couldn't see Sebastian having anything to do with this, but I couldn't say the same for his colleagues. We hadn't exactly kept our discussion in his building private. I knew Thomas had overheard, and it certainly wasn't unreasonable to think that others might have as well. I had almost no idea what went on at Fraser, a few scraps at best, but perhaps it was enough to make them feel threatened. And if that were the case, my gut told me that they wouldn't hesitate to do anything to rectify the problem. I tried to convince myself that Sebastian was just moments away from tearing down the door and riding in on his white horse, but the truth was he had no way of knowing what had happened. He'd been very clear that all our ties were severed. Even if my captors had told him they had me, they wouldn't have been stupid enough to give away their location. For now, I was on my own. Gradually, whatever they'd shot into me seemed to wear off, and I began to feel more human. My mind ran in a constant circle, my body surging with some powerful combination of fear and anger. I paced the room, testing the lock over and over, searching for breaks in the plaster, anything that might hint at some chance of escape. I knew that it was all but impossible. This wasn't some hasty, spur-of-the-moment snatch and grab, but I couldn't simply sit there and wait for what came next. It felt too much like admitting defeat. I had no idea how much time passed. It's funny how quickly you lose sense of the hours in a room with no clocks or natural light. Eventually, though, during one of my circuits of the far wall, there was a rattling at the door. Steeling myself, I took a few steps towards it, and poised there. I wasn't sure what was coming, but I wanted to be ready, should an opportunity present itself. The door flew open and a burly-looking man in a suit walked through. He had dark olive skin, darker than Sebastian's, and heavy black curls that were cropped close to his head. He was carrying a tray with a sandwich and a glass of juice resting on it. "Dinner," he said. He spoke with a sharp accent. Russian, maybe, or Middle Eastern. I had no doubt he wasn't the only one on guard duty, and judging by the easy confidence with which he moved, he wasn't particularly concerned about me escaping. But as he walked closer, I caught a glimpse of the open door behind him, and all my survival instincts kicked in. "Thank you," I replied, amazed by how little my voice was shaking. I reached calmly for the orange juice and began raising it to my lips. Then, with a flick of my wrist, I tossed the liquid into his face and darted for the door. In my head, it worked flawlessly. I saw him collapse to the floor as the citric acid set his eyes burning. I saw myself finding the guard outside sleeping on his chair, and after stealing his gun and handcuffing him in place, making a daring escape. Unfortunately, we weren't in a movie. This was real life. Instead of falling, my captor let out a short hiss, and one hand flew up to his eyes. But he was obviously well trained, because despite his temporary blindness, he moved to block my path. In retrospect, it was a pretty stupid plan. There was only one place I could go, and he knew it, but desperation is a powerful emotion, and I only had 2 words running through my head at that moment. Get away. I plowed right into him. He must have weighed at least double what I did, but that didn't stop me from trying to fight. I let loose with everything I had, pounding his chest, his stomach, his neck. I landed a few good blows, but they barely seemed to register. It was like punching a mattress. The heavy muscle that coated his body absorbed everything. I shifted my focus, trying to strike him between the legs, but by that time his eyes were open once more.